The coldest place on Earth keeps its memories under pressure. Beneath miles of Antarctic ice, mountains rise without sunlight, lakes wait in darkness, and ancient landscapes lie sealed away from the human eye. For most of recorded history, Antarctica has been described as a blank space, a continent without cities, without temples, without a recognized human past. It appears on our maps as white silence. And yet, the more carefully we look, the less empty it seems. Old military photographs, satellite gravity readings, subglacial surveys, fossil forests, strange magnetic signals, and viral coordinates on remote sheets of ice have all gathered around one haunting question. Was Antarctica always the frozen world we know today? Or did it once belong to a warmer, stranger chapter of Earth's story? The evidence does not give us an easy answer. Some of it is geological, some of it is historical, some of it may be misunderstanding shaped by distance and imagination. But together, these discoveries create a trail across the ice. And if we follow that trail carefully, without forcing certainty where none exists, Antarctica begins to feel less like an ending than a locked archive whose pages are only now beginning to thaw. Before satellites crossed the poles, before radar traced the land beneath the ice, Antarctica lived mostly in rumor. For centuries, mapmakers drew a vast southern continent because they believed the world needed balance. If there was land in the north, they imagined, there must be land in the far south. They called it Terra Australis, the unknown southern land, and filled its edges with guesswork, warnings, and empty coastlines fading into the margins of parchment. Then came the modern age of exploration. In 1820, expeditions from several nations approached the frozen coast, and Antarctica finally entered the record not as myth, but as place. Still, even after ships had seen its ice cliffs, the continent remained almost unreachable. Human beings could stand on its surface, but they could not see through it. That changed in the 20th century. Aircraft, seismic instruments, satellites, radar, and gravity missions began to turn Antarctica from a white shape on a map into a layered world. Operation High Jump, launched by the United States Navy in 1946, brought ships, aircraft, and cameras into the polar theater on an enormous scale. Decades later, satellites would return with colder, quieter precision. The mystery shifted. The question was no longer only what Antarctica looked like from above. It became what Antarctica might be hiding underneath. It began for many people with a map too old to make sense. In 1513, an Ottoman admiral named Piri Reis compiled a world map from earlier sources. Only a fragment survives, drawn on gazelle skin, showing parts of Europe, Africa, and the Atlantic world with surprising confidence for its time. But one section has drawn the most fascination. A southern landmass that some have interpreted as Antarctica, possibly shown without its modern ice cover. That interpretation remains debated. Many historians argue the shape more likely represents a distorted South American coastline or accumulated geographic error from older maps. The surviving fragment is incomplete, and old maps often blended observation, rumor, and imagination into the same visual language. Still, the fascination persists because the possibility is so powerful. If the map truly preserved older knowledge of Antarctica, then someone, somewhere, would have needed information from a world before the ice concealed the coastline. Modern science has shown that beneath Antarctica's frozen shell lies a complex landscape of mountains, basins, valleys, and ancient shorelines. Subglacial surveys have revealed a buried geography far more intricate than a simple frozen desert. The Piri Reis Map does not prove an Antarctic civilization. It may not even show Antarctica at all. But it introduces the story's first unsettling pattern. Sometimes the past appears not as a monument, but as a fragment whose meaning depends on how much we are willing to question the frame around it. The next clue did not come from parchment. It came from gravity. In East Antarctica, beneath the Wilkes Land region, satellite data revealed an enormous gravitational anomaly roughly hundreds of miles across. Instruments from missions, such as NASA's GRACE satellites, helped scientists detect variations in Earth's gravity field, including unusual mass concentrations hidden beneath ice and rock. One possible explanation is immense and violent, a buried impact structure, perhaps the scar of an ancient collision. If true, it would belong not to human history, but to planetary history, a wound in the crust preserved below the Antarctic ice sheet. Others have looked at the same anomaly and wondered whether its scale, shape, and location invite more unusual interpretations. Could something artificial of unimaginable size be buried there? That idea remains speculative and unsupported by conventional evidence. No excavated structure, no artifacts, no direct archaeological record confirms it. Yet the anomaly matters because it reminds us of the limits of sight. Antarctica hides not only small things, but continental-scale features. Gravity can whisper where eyes see nothing. Satellites can detect an absence of normality long before science can fully explain it. If Wilkes Land is an impact crater, it may tell us about catastrophe on a planetary scale. If it is something else, the question becomes even harder. Either way, beneath the smooth surface is a form large enough to disturb the measurements of Earth itself. Some mysteries look ancient because the human mind is built to recognize patterns. In the Ellsworth Mountains, sharp peaks rise from the ice like dark islands in a white sea. From certain satellite angles, several of these mountains appear strikingly pyramidal. Their slopes seem clean. Their silhouettes seem balanced. Online, they are often described as Antarctic pyramids, standing where no known civilization should ever have built them. The geological explanation is straightforward and plausible. These peaks are nunataks, mountain summits protruding through the ice. Wind, freeze-thaw cycles, erosion, and the geometry of rock can shape ridges into forms that look surprisingly architectural. Nature does not need architects to create symmetry. It only needs time, pressure, and patient destruction. Still, the image holds power. A dark triangular peak rising from endless ice feels like a message. It touches something deep in us, the same instinct that made ancient people align stones with stars and carve meaning into mountains. The question is not only whether the Ellsworth peaks are pyramids. The stronger question is why they feel like they might be. Antarctica unsettles us because it removes context. A mountain in another place is just a mountain. A mountain on a continent with no accepted ancient human story becomes a symbol, and symbols once awakened are difficult to bury again. Then there is the lake no one could see. Lake Vostok lies beneath roughly 2.5 miles of ice in East Antarctica, sealed away from the surface for an immense span of time. It is one of the largest subglacial lakes on Earth, a body of water existing in darkness under crushing pressure, warmed not by sunlight, but by the slow heat of the planet. For decades, scientists studied it from above using radar, seismic tools, and magnetic measurements. The lake became a symbol of isolation, a possible analog for hidden oceans on icy moons. If life could persist there, in cold and darkness beneath Antarctica, then life might persist in places far beyond Earth. But Lake Vostok also carried an additional intrigue. Unusual magnetic readings near one end of the lake. The anomaly invited questions. Was it a natural feature of the underlying geology? A concentration of magnetic minerals? A product of the terrain beneath the lake? Or something more difficult to explain? When Russian researchers finally reached the lake's waters after years of drilling, public imagination rushed ahead of the science. Some interpreted delays, limited updates, or cautious scientific language as silence. In reality, careful research moves slowly, especially when contamination is a concern. Even so, Lake Vostok changed the story. Antarctica was no longer only frozen land. It was a hidden world with water, pressure, chemistry, and signals still waiting to be understood. The midpoint of this journey is not a single discovery. It is a change in perspective. At first, Antarctica seems like a place where mysteries are hidden because no one has looked closely enough. But by the time we reach maps, gravity anomalies, mountain shapes, and subglacial lakes, a stranger realization emerges. We have looked closely, and the closer we look, the more layered the continent becomes. This is the central tension of Antarctica. Modern instruments do not simply explain the mystery away. They reveal better mysteries. Radar shows buried valleys. Satellites show mass anomalies. Ice cores reveal ancient air. Fossils speak of warmth where there is now cold. The continent becomes a library written in languages that do not always translate into human certainty. That does not mean every strange shape is a ruin, or every silence is evidence of concealment. The responsible path is narrower and more demanding. It asks us to hold two ideas at once: that nature is capable of forms we mistake for design, and that human history is often older, more mobile, and more fragile than we once believed. This is where the story grows larger than hidden bases or lost cities. Antarctica asks whether our picture of the past is limited not by imagination, but by access. And if access changes, history may have to change with it. In the early Cold War, the world learned to watch itself from space. The Corona satellite program, once classified, captured images of Earth during a period when governments were racing to see farther, faster, and more secretly than ever before. When some of those photographs were eventually declassified, they became historical artifacts in their own right. Old eyes in orbit, looking down at deserts, cities, coastlines, and ice. For Antarctica, these images carry a particular fascination. Researchers and independent observers have compared older satellite passes with modern imagery, searching for changes in ice, shadows, exposed rock, and geometric forms that appear and disappear with light, snow, and melt patterns. Some shapes look suggestive. Lines seem to intersect. Rectangles appear where the mind expects randomness. On a continent where almost everything is remote, even a shadow can feel important. But old satellite images are difficult evidence. Resolution, angle, season, snow cover, and processing artifacts can create misleading forms. A feature that appears geometric in one frame may dissolve under sharper imagery or different lighting. Still, these photographs matter because they capture Antarctica before the satellite age became routine. They are not proof of structures under ice, but they are time capsules of observation. And every time an old image is compared with a new one, the same question returns. What changes because the ice moves, and what changes because something beneath it is being revealed? The most profound Antarctic discovery may not look mysterious at first. It looks like wood. Scientists have found evidence of ancient forests in Antarctica, including fossilized roots, pollen, spores, and traces of plant life from periods when the continent was dramatically warmer. In some research, remnants linked to ancient temperate rainforest environments have pointed to a world that feels almost impossible beside today's ice. Imagine it. Antarctica not as a white continent, but as a landscape of damp air, dark soil, rivers, trees, and long polar light. Around 90 million years ago, during the age of dinosaurs, parts of the southern world supported vegetation under a climate far warmer than the present. The fossils do not suggest human civilization because they come from a time vastly before humans existed. But emotionally, they do something powerful. They break the spell of permanence. The ice feels eternal because our lives are brief. Yet Antarctica has not always been Antarctica as we know it. It has moved across latitudes, changed climate, carried forests, lost forests, and become a vault of frozen time. That matters for the larger mystery. If a continent can transform so completely over geological time, then our assumptions about habitability, memory, and loss become less stable. The fossil forests do not prove ancient people lived there. They prove something subtler. The world beneath the ice once belonged to life. On the internet, some Antarctic mysteries begin with a coordinate. A place identified by viewers near 66 degrees south and 99 degrees east has circulated as a possible entrance in the ice, a dark opening that seems to lead inward. From above, the feature can look like a cave mouth, a wound in the frozen surface, or the edge of something deliberately concealed. The human imagination fills such darkness quickly. A shadow becomes a tunnel becomes a base becomes a story about hidden activity beneath the ice. There are more ordinary possibilities. Antarctic ice is not static. It cracks, collapses, melts, refreezes, and flows. Wind scours surfaces into strange forms. Subglacial meltwater can shape openings and channels. Rock, shadow, and snow can combine into images that look architectural when seen from satellite height. Scale complicates everything. Without a person, a building, or a tree nearby, the eye loses its anchor. A small crevasse may look vast. A broad melt feature may look like an entrance. The unknown grows in the space where measurement is missing. Still, the coordinate became popular because it captures the emotional center of the Antarctic mystery. We are not only asking what the image shows, we are asking why the idea of an entrance feels so compelling. Perhaps because every hidden world needs a doorway, and Antarctica offers so few. By now, the 7 discoveries no longer feel like isolated curiosities. The map, the gravity anomaly, the pyramid-like peaks, the magnetic disturbance, the old satellite photos, the fossil forests, and the apparent entrance all point in different directions. Some belong to history. Some belong to geology. Some belong to climate science. Some belong to the unstable boundary between data and imagination. Taken responsibly, they do not form a simple argument for a lost Antarctic civilization. The evidence remains incomplete, and much of it has stronger natural explanations than artificial ones. But they do form something else, a portrait of a continent that resists being simplified. Antarctica is not empty. It is covered. Those are not the same thing. Beneath the ice are mountain ranges, lakes, impact possibilities, ancient ecosystems, mineral signatures, and landscapes that human beings have barely begun to interpret. This is where the theme of lost history becomes more delicate. Sometimes history is not hidden because someone erased it. Sometimes it is hidden because Earth itself is older, colder, and more patient than we are. The danger is to turn every mystery into a conclusion. The opportunity is to let every mystery deepen the question. And Antarctica, more than almost any place on Earth, teaches us that absence can be a form of evidence, but only when approached with humility. There is a reason polar mysteries hold us so tightly. Antarctica sits at the edge of the human story. It has no ancient cities in our textbooks, no familiar dynasties, no ruins visited by crowds, no inherited myths from long-settled villages. It is not woven into ordinary memory the way Egypt, Mesopotamia, Greece, or the Maya world are. That emptiness creates room for projection. We place our questions there. We imagine lost maps, buried rooms, silent machines, forgotten explorers, or human footprints erased by ice. Some of these ideas are unlikely. Others may be impossible. But the impulse behind them is deeply human. We do not search only for artifacts. We search for continuity. When an old map seems to know too much, we wonder who knew it first. When a mountain resembles a pyramid, we wonder whether design can survive where memory cannot. When fossils reveal forests under ice, we are reminded that the world can forget entire climates and still keep their remains. The Antarctic mystery is not simply about whether something artificial is buried there. It is about how human beings respond when the known world shows a seam. We lean closer. We measure. We argue. We imagine. And sometimes, through that uneasy mixture, discovery begins. Science is often portrayed as the end of mystery, but in Antarctica, it behaves more like a lantern. It does not remove the darkness all at once. It reveals shapes within it. A radar line becomes a valley. A gravity reading becomes a possible crater. A fossil fragment becomes a forest. A lake under ice becomes a question about life in sealed worlds. Every answer creates a more precise unknown. That precision matters. Without it, mystery becomes noise. With it, mystery becomes a field of inquiry. The most compelling Antarctic discoveries are not the ones that demand belief. They are the ones that survive careful attention. Lake Vostok survives because it is real, measurable, and scientifically important. The fossil forests survive because they are physical evidence of a warmer world. The Wilkes Land anomaly survives because instruments detect something unusual, even if interpretation remains open. Other claims may fade under scrutiny, but even those have value when handled honestly. They teach us how easily the eye can be misled, how powerfully the mind seeks patterns, and how much we want the past to contain one more unopened room. The real story, then, is not a battle between skeptics and believers. It is a quieter journey between wonder and discipline. And at the end of that journey, Antarctica remains what it has always been, not empty, not fully known, and not finished speaking. So we return to the first image, a white continent, silent from above, crowded with questions beneath. Was Antarctica once ice-free? In parts, yes, across deep geological time. Was it once alive? The fossils tell us that it was, though not in any human age. Was it inhabited by a lost civilization? The evidence does not allow us to say that. The record is incomplete, and the strongest discoveries point first toward Earth's natural power rather than human construction. But the absence of a simple answer does not make the mystery smaller. It makes it more honest. The Piri Reis Map reminds us that old knowledge can be difficult to interpret. Wilkes Land reminds us that something enormous can be hidden beneath ice and still leave a trace. The Ellsworth peaks remind us that nature can look intentional. Lake Vostok reminds us that life and chemistry may persist in darkness. Satellite images remind us that observation changes with time. Fossil forests remind us that no landscape is permanent. The viral entrance reminds us that every shadow asks for context. Antarctica does not need exaggeration to feel profound. It is already a continent of buried mountains, sealed water, ancient warmth, and unfinished questions. Perhaps the greatest discovery is not that Antarctica defies history, but that it defies our desire for history to be simple. And somewhere beneath the ice, the past remains patient, waiting for better instruments, clearer evidence, and the humility to listen before we decide what it means.